Hi, I'm Stephanie Mortis-Stevens, Assistant Director for Trinity University Press. I had the pleasure of working with Corky to see Lefinka, the book, come into fruition. I fell in love with Corky's story and Lefinka's story, and I have a feeling you will too. For 20 plus years, Corky Parker ran La Finca Caribe, an eco lodge in Vieques, Puerto Rico. What started as a rough and tumble dream grew into a paradise enjoyed by guests from around the world. Sketchbook in hand, Corky chronicled her adventures in words and drawings as she lived with the land and got to know guests from across the globe. To tell the story, she created the newly released graphic memoir, La Finca, Love, Loss, and Laundry on a Tiny Puerto Rican Island. I know Kelly is going to say a little bit more about Corky in just a bit, but I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Trinity University Press. As a nonprofit cultural and educational publisher, we are committed to an evolving agenda of work that engages, questions, and brings us together as a community in effective and productive ways. We are all better and stronger when we learn a little bit about each other. And now to learn a little bit more about Kelly Thompson, who will be joining Corky in conversation tonight. Kelly is the founder and executive director of ViequesLove, a 501c3 nonprofit formed the day Hurricane Maria struck Vieques as a Category 5 storm. The organization quickly raised over $1 million, was the first to land a plan on Vieques 5 days after the storm, and became critical in the recovery of the island. Kelly is a graphic designer by trade and the publisher and designer of Vieques Insider, a magazine that connects tourists to the offerings and culture of the island. Originating from Pennsylvania, she has lived on the island for 16 years with her Viequenese partner and their 10-year-old daughter. To purchase Lefinka, the book, follow the links in the chat, and a portion of the proceeds will go to ViequesLove. There's one link for shipping to the continental US and one for shipping to Puerto Rico. That said, I'd like to welcome Kelly Thompson to start the night.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Trinity Press, for inviting me here tonight. I'm so honored to be here with Corky, a dear friend who is known to many on the island of Vieques, Puerto Rico, as a very gentle soul, very creative, eccentric, and the founder of Finca Caribe, which, if you're not familiar with the guest house, it is a very eclectic, funky little hidden gem in the jungle of Vieques. And it's, for those who have stayed there, an island experience, and it can change lives. So thanks again for inviting me to be here. And with Corky, I've gotten to know her so much better, and I'm really appreciative of that. So Corky, I'd just like you to tell our listeners, how did a woman, a businesswoman, a mom running a small family business, you know, from the Pacific Northwest, seek out and find this inn on Vieques? Could you tell us that story?
Yeah, it's right here.
I know. I picked it up. I couldn't put it down for the entire 3 hours and then read it again.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, it's funny where you start with a story. And I guess I'm a country girl. I'm not a city person. I'm not really a technology person. Please don't laugh for those in the audience who know that. Yet I was in a career that was very urban and very technology driven, of filmmaking and marketing. And my soul was not satisfied in that at all. And so I had this weird epiphany. I do these throughout, I've done them throughout my life, where turning 40, business had been going really well for a few years. It was right before the .com. It was just kind of as things were getting going in Seattle. And I just had this realization that, wow, we love to travel, my husband and I. We could just keep an eye out and look for a place where we could be the people, the hosts of some funky inn. We love to travel like to Thailand or Mexico or wherever that we were lucky enough. And I would look at these people going, how did they pull that off? Later, people would look at me and say, how did they pull that off? And so I just said, what would you think if for 10 years, the next 10 years, we did that as the kids were growing, wherever we traveled, would look for places. David, I have to say, was incredibly supportive and said, cool, let's do it. He was an adventurer too. And what I thought would take 10 years, as luck would have it, took 6 months. The first place we chose, always based on where our frequent flyer miles could go, as there's a line in the book, baby, we don't make money, we make miles. That was critical definer of where we could get, limiter of where we could travel. So somehow I got a hold of a book called Rum and Reggae, and the Inside Traveler's Guide to Puerto Rico or the Caribbean. And they said 2 of the finest islands that nobody knows about are Culebra and Vieques. And it was like, I've always loved places that nobody knows about. I guess we all do. That's a huge priority. So when I heard about those beaches, I went, I want to know. And that's how we first found out about it.
So what was it like back then, Vieques, when you arrived, and what made you immediately fall in love with the island?
Well, is everybody able to hear the roosters that are still like to me? I'm surrounded by roosters.
I'm competing with them right now. So
I was an elegant set here, but behind me there's roosters crowing like crazy, and that's kind of classic Vieques. It was even more funky back then. Gosh, what was it like? It still is awesome, but of course, I always like things, the old school way. So we arrived by boat, and all the streets were one way, but nobody seemed to be paying attention. And I'd go, wow, that car's driving down a one way street. We just changed it. Nobody's really learned. I thought, wow, this is an interesting place. I don't know, it resonated. We loved Puerto Rico itself. We traveled for a week there. It wasn't touristy. Culebra was a little bit more, dare I say, gringo. And they had bagel shops and kind of taquerias, and there wasn't anything like that here back then. It was just kind of funky Vieques.
Pure island life, right?
Yep.
So that being said, the pure island life. In fact, I'd like to kind of give the reader, set the stage for the listeners, because you have a sidebar in your book that really struck me as pure island. That's the introduction to the book, and there's a little illustration of a frog. It says, "There's a goat leg in the front yard, a small frog who lives in my shower, a bong on the front desk, and a guest's underwear soaking in the main house in the kitchen sink." Now that is, I think, a perfect example of what it was like and what it kind of still is like. Yeah, so very, very authentic.
I think that's really a good point, Kelly. I think that what I always wanted was not to change the island or have some place that was different from. I wanted to celebrate, really utilize and celebrate what I found here. I'm not Puerto Rican. I can't pretend to be Puerto Rican and know, decades of the culture, but I just saw such awesome, Shea Shack, and for the Viequenses watching, the places that were just so homespun or that place, I never knew the name of the place with all the canopy of all the beer cans where we would, now an art gallery. That's in the book. I'm much more into the dancing under the beer can canopies, but with live music. So yeah, there was a kind of a old school Caribbean feel that I saw when we found, because on our second day here, we opened, the paper was at 8.5 by 11. What was the Vieques Times, right?
Times by Charlie Connell.
Very formal title, but it was like a mimeographed 2-page newspaper. And I thought, oh, how cute, look at this. And then on the want ads, there were maybe 3 want ads, and ads, classified ads. And one of them was for sale, women's retreat center, handmade cabins like in the hills. I'm like, uh-oh. So
you found it in 6 months.
Yeah, and our first day here, I think we saw it in the paper. So we were out there the same day.
Well, what were some of the challenges having the island be so kind of remote, and what were some of the challenges starting a guest house like La Finca?
Oh my goodness. How much time do we have? What were some of the challenges? Oh gosh, from the get-go, we, oh gosh, there's just so many. It's like, the day we bought it, I remember, and Gail, if you're watching, you know that I love you. Oh, here's some pictures. Oh, good. This might help for the folks who didn't get to see the Finca before. This is our main house, what we called Casa Grande, the big blue house with the big yellow sun, which is, I love it so much that I just get choked up every time I see it. What can I say? That's the book. And then that little lizard is kind of the whole 9 yards too. I don't know who's in charge. If Bergen's going to do the artwork, we're just going to float through it and I'll respond. But challenges never stopped. I mean, just that blue color. You know, people say, God, I love your palette. See this turquoise around the windows with me and 2 of my kids here. People say, oh, a great palette. How did you ever come up with that? Like, I took the paint that was at the store and that was the 2 cans, you know. So the
that
challenge,
was what was available.
Yeah, and the wooden walkways right here that the place was famous for, they decayed every 2 to 5 years. Everything had to be replaced. The old wooden stairs up there, everything rusts, everything metal will be rusted, anything cloth will get mildew. You know, it's just the tropics.
But you really integrated it with nature, and it became the eco lodge. I mean, you really did. And how did that come about? I mean, it's like your life's work is to live in harmony with nature, and that was really the epitome of it.
That part, how did that come to be? Is that's kind of just how I roll. It's my life being. You know, my kids call me Momish instead of Amish because I'm so, you know, sparse. So I just applied my values. My mother was the same way, just kind of intensely conservation oriented, recycling everything, and even better than recycling, using less. Avoiding kind of consumption. And so we really just used the Finca. I thought, well, wow, this is perfect with this natural setting that Gail had done such a beautiful job in clearing the land and doing things that I couldn't even begin to do. Then, you know, we just kept it simple because that's the way I roll.
And that's really a really prevailing theme throughout the book is your love of nature. And to me, this is really is a love story. It's a love story about falling in love with an island, with an inn, but also like following your own intuition. And you mentioned epiphany that I would love for you to share with the listeners. This page really struck me. This epiphany and the paragraph that starts with poor mom. Could you read a little bit of that for us?
Sure. Speaking of my mom. Oh, here we're bouncing around with some other shots. This is just a collage about arriving on Vieques that we were talking about before. But okay, sure. So I'm reading. If people get that little, I'm gonna hold it up. So
Epiphany.
Yeah, that's the epiphany. Okay. Poor mom, I don't think she ever learned that saving your soul can qualify as common sense. Looking back now across the years, I see that looking for Lefinka was not only intentional, but one of the truly proactive decisions in my life. I was deliberately acting on my own behalf for a change, like being my own guardian angel.
That's really wonderful. I think we can all relate to that. But clearly we can't all sail off. You write about sailing off on a raft, starting to dream about looking for your Lefinka and sailing off on a raft. Clearly we can't all move to the Caribbean and buy an inn, but there's a deeper message here. What is it that you want your readers to understand or to connect with?
Yeah. Learning to listen to yourself, and not in a narcissistic way. It's such an interesting balance. You have to learn from your neighbors. That was a huge, huge part of the learning for me here. Have to learn from people. You don't want to be this arrogant, you know, this is how we do it back home, and so I'm going to apply that because it works up there in that world. So you have to learn from this environment and this culture and this reality. And so there's a lot of listening and learning. And then there is this inside voice, feeling, epiphany, deep, deep place. And I guess it's just maybe years on the planet for me, and I might be a slow learner, but it's taken most of my life to learn that, of how to listen, when to listen, what to incorporate and what to ignore. It gets kind of like this. This is a good one to talk about right now. This is really good. An early editor asked me, you know, what is the story really trying to say? And something, how are you going to differentiate? It was like, it's about doing things the way you know, and proving that, darn it, even though people say you can't, you know, I was told you cannot have mismatched sheets. And I thought that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. I only want the people who don't care, because that was a huge part of running the inn, actually, Kelly, was focusing on who I wanted to have there as a business. In many ways, why we named it Finca, which is like a family finca. It can be an estate, it can be a farm, it can be a getaway. In many different Latin cultures, different Latin countries, it has different meanings. But for us, it was our place in the country and our families. And we always treated it like that, like you're coming to our place and this is how we do it. And so I tried to be really clear. Our first line in the brochure was our towels don't match and we don't have any AC or television. We were lucky if the phone worked. I mean, for 3 months, once a lizard fried in a, whatever they have those things on the telephone pole, and the whole neighborhood didn't have any phone for 3 months because there was a fried lizard in it. So anyway, yeah.
And lizards are a part of life, right?
Lizards are a big part of life here. And I didn't want, it's funny that you should say that, because just, I'm on Vieques now. I assume everybody knows that, even though Kelly and I are not in the same room, we're on the same island. And the other day I heard someone kind of quite alarmed that a lizard was in her room and she went running looking for help. And I was so taken by that. Like, we always celebrated lizards. There's one on this art that we're looking at here. That's my son Gus's hand, and he was so proud he had caught one. And there's some other really good things here. There's an iguana down at the beach, and just a
tarantulas.
The crane at the pool. And then I love that stag beetle. That is not fake news. The size of that stag beetle, that's a ukulele behind it, but it is about a foot behind it. Oh yeah, and there's a little tiny frog you can't see that did live in my sink. He would come out every evening when we put the Buena Vista Social Club on. He would start chirping. But yeah, I only wanted, that's what was so fun about it, is that our guests became friends because they were already siphoned off as, whoops, whoop, not the right art. I think that's why it became a family, a very family place, because we all became friends. It was very, very specific target audience, I guess, target market.
Yeah. I remember a friend telling me, and it will always stick with me. At one point I said, oh, I have to go back to the real world when I was leaving Vieques for a while. And she said, that's not the real world, this is. And it's the lizards in your room. That's, they were here first, right? You said that the other day. They were here first. So yeah.
I try to remind everybody when guests would freak out. I really got good at it even later with, God forbid, cockroach. I wish we had named cockroaches. Remember the other day I said, why didn't we name them Gaia goddess bugs? And then people would go, oh, I was so lucky I had a Gaia bug. They would be running around celebrating this bug that came into their room. Instead, it's a cockroach, which sounds kind of
sounds kind of bad.
I had to the point where I would tell them, you know what, you guys, we can't get rid of the cockroaches. This is their home. We're visiting them. And it's a good reorientation of the perspective, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I think the guests that stayed at Lefinka had that kind of life-altering experience, having been there to experience true island living in their vacation, and became travelers and not tourists.
Yeah.
And how do you think your guests were affected? Were some of them altered by the experience, or were some of them going back to reality, thinking it's the real world?
Oh, I think it's some of each, but I do think that for the most part, we had pretty happy guests because we were pretty clear. If they asked questions, we could steer them off, say, you know what, you might not be happy here. But I like to think that it altered their lives. I know it sure altered mine. And we had so many regulars. We had so many families and groups, educational groups that would come back here, both lots of Puerto Rican groups, lots of North American that came back. The Montessori school here came 17 years in a row. I mean,
wow.
So another family that I always think about, they came 5 years in a row for Christmas. So their son had grown up without a commercial Christmas, and
wow,
they had really wonderful. Yeah. Yep.
All right. So why laundry? I'm curious. Laundry is so prevalent in your title. That your title is La Finca, Love, Lot, and Laundry on a Tiny Puerto Rican Island.
So why is laundry included in that? I guess we can, there's the big things like love and the big things like loss. And then there's just the day-to-day, no matter what, there's just that day-to-day, and it's relentless. And it's particularly relentless on an island that is just so much more remote than even Puerto Rico, so the challenges are really great. I mean, there would be groups coming in and they're expecting catered, when we'd have a whole group like the Sierra Club or, any of the university groups, on and on, yoga groups, they should expect that, they signed up for catering, but then suddenly the folks who were they're picking up everything for you at Costco over on the main island, suddenly their car broke down, or, whatever, or they didn't, or the ferry stopped working. We know about that one.
Oh, we know that even right now.
We know that right now. Sadly, horribly.
Yep.
And
without gas for 5 days and
without gas. I mean, I hope that people heard that. Without gas, when I arrived, a week ago, there was no gas on the island, and I don't think
not just for a day. You have to really ration.
Right.
Living on an island is, it can be very difficult. But
so I think that's what the laundry is. We can have our dreams and we can have our fears and our sadnesses, but no matter what, we do just have to take care of the basics and go on. And I happen to flippin' love laundry. And I was famous in my little world at the Finca for even art directing the laundry, because I can't help but think about textures and colors and patterns together. And one guest in all of my 20 whatever years said, do you think of, she goes, I watch you fold and hang this laundry every day. Do you think about it as you hang? I'm like, I do, as a matter of fact, because I just like the green next to the pink. And then there's the crazy daisy. And the laundry was huge. I never got to the beach, but I really got zen with my.
Oh, wow. Okay. You can come to my house anytime then. Well, as any love story has its ups and downs, this one we've covered love and we've covered laundry, but this one has loss. And I'm sorry if this is difficult for you, because I know how difficult this is, but wow, the end of the last chapter of Lefinka. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, let's back up one page, and when it was ending on a really high note, right? I mean, the real last chapter is when, after all the chaos and all the craziness, and there had been a lot of loss, really, Kelly, before we get to the big loss at the end. There was lots and lots of loss. I mean, my first marriage was,
partner.
Yeah, I mean, we divorced. That's horrible for anybody on all sides, you know, kids, everything, that's loss. Then we went bankrupt, another big loss, really big, because everything had been going so well, the .com thing. So my 40s were spent dealing with what felt like unrelenting loss. I went through a period of like, if I touch it, it will die. And so I didn't want to touch much. And all of that, I think, is in the book, you know, being now a single mom, and now in my 40s, and now unemployed, and mother of 3 teenagers. That was loss. That was loss of mind. So, but then things have this way, you know, you'll wait long enough, you'll work long enough, you sing country western songs, you write country western songs, you meditate, you get good therapists, you hold fast, you write, you sketch, you find work eventually. You're willing to sell your soul a little bit to the corporate world for work. You do whatever it takes and you get through. And then I met my second husband, and he fell in love with the Finca. Bill, anyone who knows Bill knows he totally got it. Here he was, an architect, and used to everything all being prim and clean and perfect and well designed. And he walks into this insanity of where nothing is even, there is no code to live up to. So we had gone through lots of loss and gains, and the craziness of running the inn, the wonder of it all. Ending the book on, wow, and here we go, woohoo, we're good. And I remember just that line of, I'm the lucky lady who got the Finca. And I think a lot of people who read the book don't get that. Like, what, you're lucky you just had like 5-10 chapters of insanity. But I guess I'm okay with some amount of insanity, because I felt, turning 60 5 years ago, I was just like, I have really gotten here. Everything was good. And
I still had Lefinka, the dream to come.
Oh yeah. And by then I was smart enough to have my own retreats with my own friends, and the kids were having, you know, their weddings and their retreats. You know, it's our place, and we were owning it and loving it. And then the book was done, and all it needed was now editing. And the month that the book was done, then my husband was diagnosed with cancer. So the book kind of went on a shelf for a year and a half. And then 6 weeks after he died, on the day of his memorial, Maria came through that day. And
Category 5.
Which is category out of anyone's imagination, unless you're here. Wish we had the slide of, I think we left it out, there's a picture of me sitting on my oven that had been flown like the length of a football field almost, or so. The house, we think, rolled, and obviously no one was in it. Anyway, lots and lots of loss. What can I say?
Mm-hmm.
Have I touched on enough loss?
And what What is it? I'm curious to know now that you're back and you're here on Vieques. There it is. That's Lefinka after the storm.
Yeah, you can see little specks of blue. Anyone from the island probably knows that I would get calls. First of all, there was no way of knowing how bad it was for weeks because remember we were living on satellite only. Remember, Kelly, there was no phone, and it was.
I know.
You were here, and someone from the island, and if she's watching, someone sent me satellite photos, and I immediately wanted to see the property, and I couldn't see it. It was like, because that's the blue house, guys. That's what we're looking at. You can see a little piece of blue. And so people would start, when we started getting cell coverage, they'd be like, Corky, I saw some blue lumber down on the way towards the airport. You know,
oh, wow.
Anything blue, anything
Just
painted crazy blue was just scattered here and there. So that was rugged. That was really rugged.
Yeah.
That satellite photo was not good.
Wow. Yeah, you had time to prepare for your husband's death. You didn't have time to prepare for Lefinka being flattened to the ground.
Right. Yeah, we had been so lucky that we got, as everybody does, a little bit cash about that. Oh, well, we still put everything away, but we just had no way of knowing that we had lived through categories horribly that had demolished concrete and glass mansions right nearby, a quarter mile away, and they'd be ruined and we weren't. So we just thought, whoa, those air vents that the ladies left when they built it really work. Not enough, but our other houses did. Other houses that Bill and I had built that he designed to survive did survive. So,
well, now that you're here, I'm curious, what do you really miss? What do you miss most? I should say. I know you miss it all, but what do you miss most about Lefinka?
Okay, it's going to sound corny, but that's because I am corny. Everyone thinks I miss the palm trees. Everyone thinks I miss the beachiness of it all. I miss the community of the guests, which is one of the things I love about these silly goofball, these events, is that I'm talking to a lot of past guests who I'm just incredibly fond of. And then more specifically, I think the biggest thing that I haven't been able really to resolve how I'm going to fix this hole or this missing part, but that is the ability to share and give to nonprofits. This I never said no to anybody who ever asked. And so I ended up, whether it was schools in New Jersey or Chicago or Seattle or Latino cultural centers, I gave a lot of weeks away, and then they would auction it and it would turn into thousands, a couple thousand or more dollars for them. I really, really miss having a vehicle with which I can share and help. That's really hard to figure that one out.
And my daughter was a recipient of your generosity, having been at Monte Camp many, many years, spending the night at Lefinka, her first night away from home by herself. I mean, yes, it's all the kids that benefited from your Lefinka camp and the Monte Camp with Vieques Conservation and Historical Trust is just phenomenal, and that was a big part of it for my daughter.
That's so great,
I do apologize. I never mentioned to the listeners that they could type any questions into the chat. But I have to say that there's some comments, and you can feel free to do it now because, but Mark Black says that your sign for Lefinka is at Rising Roost. Did you know that?
Well, it used to be is Rising Roost where, what's the bar downtown? The big bar on the water that we lived in,
Al's. Yeah, no.
That's what it used to be.
Rising Roost now, so you can go see it there.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, whoever's nice enough to, there's little pieces of the Finca all over this island.
Yeah, little
souvenirs. But I want to get back Kelly, that's really why I was so happy to partner with you on this. I don't know where we are in time, but I want to switch gears a little bit. I mean, at least switch camera lenses and aim to you right now, and helping whatever I can do, whatever any of us can do to help this island. The Finca loved to help this island, and now this version of Lefinka, this book, can do a little tiny bit. And that's why we are partnering with ViequesLove, and you have done such an amazing thing. I don't know if anybody who doesn't know this island can even imagine what this woman here next to me has done for Vieques. Can you tell us a little bit about ViequesLove?
Yes. Well, the night of the hurricane, I was in the States. Many people probably know this story, but I was in the States, and my partner Cheo was here. I had left to work on the magazine after Irma. We didn't have power even after Irma. So I went with a round trip ticket to come back in a week or 5 days. And we realized Maria was coming. So I stayed knowing that the island was going to get hit hard. The night of the hurricane, I had no idea how bad it would, or how it would affect everyone's lives. I remember getting a Facebook message from a friend before it hit saying, this is going to change the rest of your life. And I thought, well, it's a hurricane, how can it change the rest of my life? But it sure did. And it changed the island. It's a story though of how much people love this island, and just like you want to give back, because there are people here in the chat saying, I came there 6 years ago and I loved it. I can't wait to come back. Helen Meyer. ViequesLove, when I started it as a GoFundMe, I had people commenting. I went there in 1972 on my honeymoon. I've never been back, but I fell in love with the island. Our donors were just so wanting to help. So anyway, ViequesLove, we raised over $1 million. We were the first ones 5 days after the storm. We had our own set of challenges with satellite phones. We had 3 phone calls a day, one at midnight, to find out what was needed. Mark Martin and a group of people, Angie Adams and Frank Sanchez, all of these people were here. We've been friends forever. So I've been here 16 years. We've been very good friends, and I knew they would be hustling to get something done. And they had no idea I was in the States. So Angie has a funny story. One of her friends kept saying, call Kelly Thompson. She had a satellite phone. She was getting a hold of a satellite phone to call. She's like, why on earth would I call Kelly? She's just as effed up as I am. She thought I was here. But when we got a hold of each other to find out, okay, how do we use this money? And the people on the ground knew exactly what was needed. And every day we'd have a satellite phone call to say, okay, tomorrow we need this medicine, we need this person evacuated. It was just incredible, an incredible display of people who really love Vieques. And our donors, I mean, it was amazing just to hear their comments and GoFundMe. That was what made me the most sad of everything, was that they were not connected to power. They could not see the response from people all over. I mean, and so the people here who had felt that they were lost or forgotten or isolated had no idea what was happening. This amazing, rising up that was happening, and these people showing their love for Vieques. And they had no way of knowing that. But once we got the satellite phones here, we were able to connect and really get things moving. So we're still working for preparedness, because that's a year-round job. We have to work on preparedness, resilience, to be stronger the next time something like this happens, because this won't be the last time. So we're working every single day to make the island, build up the capacity of the resilience and sustainability of the island. Anyway, if anyone has any more questions about that, our website is ViequesLove.org, and I'm certainly available at any time to talk to people.
I see a question here that is just about what I was going to ask. Someone says, is there still a need for volunteers on the island? And I was going to ask you, what can people do to help ViequesLove, which helps Vieques? So those are two kind of related questions.
Yeah. The volunteer efforts have to be coordinated. So, you know, they're really, we're trying to build our own capacity with coordinating those efforts. We always have some projects here or there that need volunteers, but the best thing is to offer skills or funding. I mean, we really, if you have skills that you'd like to donate, you know, we love to hear from graphic designers, accountants, fundraisers, any kind of skills that you can offer, and funding. We employ Viequenses. We have a primarily Spanish-speaking board now, which we're very, very proud of. A lot of Viequenses on our board, and we're making the decisions that are right and careful for the island.
Thanks.
So
Kelly, I just got notice of 3 new questions that had been hidden in another deal here. One is, how can we get a signed copy? That's really sweet. So in a couple of weeks, Daniel, if you're on, I'm not sure if you're on the island. It's very sweet. He wants one now. Well, nothing happens quickly on this island. We're hoping the books get here while I'm still here. You know, that's like, so yes, getting a signed copy is really hard during COVID, because this is my bookstore reading right here, you know, remotely. So there will be, in the end of the month, there will be a reading and signing. But then he also asked if, when do you imagine Vieques can be visited? You can definitely, oh gosh, yeah, Daniel does not live here. You can visit Vieques.
I know, Daniel.
And when do you think it will open again? It is open. It's not my Finca. It's a new Finca. It's Finca Victoria. I sold to a former guest who loved the place, and she had gotten to know it very, very closely. And that's a whole other story. So you can visit it, but you'll be visiting the land in a very different context. So they have a few little relics of stepping stones and shutters here and there from the old world. And then lastly, someone named Augustus Merwin, what a name, it's my middle kid, is asking me, Mom, do you have a favorite tree, plant, pet, or area that you watched grow throughout your time on the property? Anything special that you went through, the ups and downs that lasted? Yeah, Gus, I'm here to tell you that the palm tree that we planted when you guys were all, this palm tree was like as big as my kids, like 4 feet. And it's now that it lasted all these years. Thank God it wasn't one of the ones that the kids put boards into so they could climb up to get the coconuts. Yeah. But many, many, many of our special favorite plants, like the big rubber tree that people come from all over the island to see, that massive rubber tree, that's still there. Plants last, a lot of plants last through.
And your stepping stones, it was wonderful to walk through the property the other day with you and see where you had, with your kids, made those stepping stones and put shells and little pieces of tile in them, and they're there. It's wonderful.
Yep. So I don't know if there's any other questions.
If there are, you're certainly free to stick around and have an after chat with us. We won't end the meeting, but I would just like to thank Trinity University Press for hosting this, and for Corky for everything that you're doing for the island and for ViequesLove. It's really, really wonderful. And it's just wonderful to see you again here on the island. Also, if you can pick up the book, I think there's a link in the chat somewhere of shipping to Puerto Rico, or you can go to tupress.org and use a code Lefinka10
Yeah, is there,
You get a 10% discount, I believe.
yeah, usually we put up a little thing. Oh yeah, there it is. So it is all listed in the chat.
Okay, yeah.
And thank you. There's just all kinds of sweet comments.
I know, I'm looking at the comments and it's really wonderful to see everyone here and the questions and
Yeah, a lot of love, a lot of love. That's ViequesLove. What a perfect name, huh? You know.
well, that's what it was. It was really just an outpouring of love. Yeah, I'm looking for other, oh, Freda Plessa, who's coming in a couple of days. Oh, and she's, oh, wonderful. She's offering her skills. I'm so excited to meet you, Freda. That's wonderful. Yeah, if anyone has any other questions for Corky, feel free to put them in the chat. I know there are a lot of questions about Vieques right now, and it really is, Vieques is really back. It's open, but of course there's always the concern of travel, and we've been really careful, and that's one thing with ViequesLove, our the contact tracing program that we started. We kept COVID at bay for 5 months.
Right.
COVID is here on the island, and it's definitely, we don't have a hospital. So it is a big concern for us, but the island is, you know, things are opening back up to tourism and to coming. And we still need the support.
Yep. Yep. And now I apologize to the person saying, can we visit Vieques again? That's what he's referring. It's not hurricane. We've been talking so much about hurricane. He's obviously talking about COVID. And that is, you know.
Yeah.
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 So, but it is opening up carefully. I mean, you know, everybody's wearing masks. So that's.
Oh, it's very, very careful here. Very careful. And things are, yeah. And a lot of people think that once their vaccine, you know, once they have the vaccine, they're, you know, it's for all. If you see what's, you know, happening spring break all over the world, it's like, it's pretty scary because the vaccines don't mean that you can't carry it and spread it to the people who aren't vaccinated. You just won't have the effects. So we have to be really careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did Scott and partner get to reopen Mama Sangha? Not yet. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that, but not yet.
Yeah, I know there's some pretty funny questions that are very Vieques oriented, but I'll have to just run into folks on the beach. But stay tuned on Facebook. There will be an announcement of the reading that's going to come up on the 27th. Space is limited, so we're going to have to do like an RSVP thing or 2 different shifts or something depending on interest, assuming the books. So do you think there will be a new government-funded hospital of some sort?
Soon. Well, the new health, the new director of the Secretary of Health from Puerto Rico is Via Kenzie. So he's
Wonderful.
Focused on the hospital.
Right.
So we're really, really happy that he's there.
Great. Well,
so yeah.
Look at all these
So
sweet.
Corky, again, how do people order the book? Would they go to tupress.org?
You can get the book. You get the book at any bookstore. If they don't have it, chances are they won't. And it's only been out a month or 2. But just order it through your bookstore. That's the very, very best way. Or order it through your library. Someone showed me that their library is getting it in Colorado the other day.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, I know, because 2 people had asked for it. So just order it at your local bookstore. I'm a big fan of local businesses, and or you can get it through TU Press, and or any other online source. But
okay. Other people are asking, Charlotte Kirscher, thank you. So nice to hear the conversation today. 2 wonderful women. So nice to meet you, Kelly, and to see Corky. Claire Nelson, inside my copy of the book when we see you, if that works. Corky is in Esperanza, so Claire, maybe you could track her down. David, do you sell any Lefinka merchandise, t-shirts, prints, anything?
Oh, I wish. Yeah, all the t-shirts got ruined. All this due shipment of boxes and boxes were strung throughout the jungle. I have them nailed to my wall. No, we're not real big. The old Finca, I'm not real big on commercial. I never did very much of that stuff. I probably should have, but whatever. Right now, the book is, that's it.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, so
All right.
I think it's a wrap. Unless there's
I
any.
think so.
Great. Sweet.
Aw.
Thank you, everybody. And can I just give a shout out before we close out? This is Valerie Gillette, a wonderful local artist who's sharing her home and lots of lights and her paintings. Just part of the love that all the folks who've been so sweet, from Sylvia at Lefinka Victoria, and Val and Franz and Richard and Katrina and Peter and Kelly, everybody. Thank you so much for the big welcome. Come back.
Yeah, thank you, Corky. Thank you for everything you do and have done for this island. My daughter and I thank you.
Oh, back at you, Kelly. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for all the listeners. We really had a great time tonight.